My name is Grace Mitchell, and I'm 19 years old. 10 years ago, my parents made a decision that would shatter my world and reshape everything I thought I knew about family, love, and the true meaning of abandonment. They left me with my grandmother when I was 9. Not for a weekend, not for a summer, but forever. They vanished completely from my life, never calling, never writing, never sending a single dollar. For a decade, I wondered if I'd ever see them again. Then, 3 weeks ago, my beloved grandmother passed away, leaving behind a shocking $10 million inheritance from my grandfather's pharmaceutical company. Suddenly, the parents who couldn't be bothered to send a birthday card reappeared at her funeral, dressed in designer black, demanding their rightful inheritance as her only child. But what happened next in that lawyer's office left everyone speechless, including me. Before we dive into this incredible story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I still remember that September morning with perfect clarity. The leaves were just starting to turn gold outside Grandma Maggie's Victorian house in Hartford, Connecticut. My parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, had been talking in hushed tones for weeks about a big opportunity in Singapore. Dad worked in international finance, and Mom was a freelance artist who could supposedly work from anywhere. "It's just temporary, sweetie," Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes as she smoothed down my hair one last time. "Daddy got an amazing job offer that will set us up for life. We need to get settled first, find the right school for you, the right neighborhood. You understand, don't you?" I didn't understand. Not at all. Dad was already loading their rental car, checking his watch every few minutes. "We'll video call every week," he promised, ruffling my hair like I was 5 instead of 9. "You'll have so much fun with Grandma, you won't even notice we're gone." Grandma Maggie stood behind me, her hands gentle but firm on my shoulders. I could feel them trembling slightly, though her voice stayed steady. "Of course Grace will be fine here, won't you, dear?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "We'll be back before you know it," Mom said, already backing toward the car. "Maybe by Christmas, Easter at the latest." They drove away without looking back, not once. Grandma held me as I sobbed on the porch, whispering into my hair, "It's okay, my darling. I'm here. I'll always be here." Little did I know, she was already documenting everything: the date, the time, their promises, and most importantly, what they didn't take with them: me. Christmas came and went. No call, no card, nothing. Easter passed the same way. Then my 10th birthday. Then another Christmas. The video calls they promised never happened. The letters I wrote them through Grandma's old address book contacts returned unopened. By the time I turned 11, I'd stopped watching for the mailman. By 12, I'd stopped flinching when the phone rang. By 13, when classmates talked about their parents, I'd learned to say mine worked overseas and changed the subject quickly. Grandma never complained, but I saw the bills piling up. She'd retired from her part-time job at the local pharmacy to raise me, living off her modest pension. She took on seamstress work in the evenings, her arthritis getting worse each year, just to afford my school supplies and clothes. "Why don't they at least send money?" I asked her once, finding her asleep at her sewing machine at midnight. She looked at me with those wise gray eyes and said something I'll never forget. "Some people, Grace, think love is just a word. But real love? Real love shows up. It stays. It sacrifices without keeping score." Meanwhile, she was keeping score in her own way. Every birthday they missed, documented. Every school play, every parent-teacher conference where she sat alone, photographed and filed. Every medical emergency where she was the only emergency contact, carefully recorded. I didn't know about the filing cabinet in her bedroom closet, filled with 10 years of meticulous records. I didn't know about the private investigator she'd hired with her savings to track them down. I didn't know she'd discovered they were living lavishly in Singapore, posting on social media about their child-free lifestyle. All I knew was that Grandma was documenting everything, though I couldn't understand why. High school was where I learned exactly what people thought of abandoned children. "Oh, that's Grace," I once overheard Mrs. Patterson telling a new teacher. "The grandmother is raising her. Parents just left. Such a shame. She's bright, but you know how these situations affect children." These situations, like I was a case study instead of a person. At parent events, I'd catch the looks, part pity, part relief that their children had stable homes. When I won the science fair junior year, the principal made a big speech about how I'd overcome my circumstances. When I got into pre-med at UConn with a full scholarship, the guidance counselor said it was inspiring, considering everything. Considering I'd been dumped like unwanted luggage? Yeah, pretty inspiring. But here's what they didn't see. Grandma at every single event, dressed in her best outfit, cheering louder than any parent. Grandma staying up until 2 a.m. helping me with calculus, even though she'd never finished high school herself. Grandma selling her jewelry piece by piece. Oh, I never wear that old thing anyway. To pay for my SAT prep courses. One day, sorting through old photos for a school project, I found something odd. Bank statements showing Grandma had once had significant savings, nearly $800,000 from selling Grandpa's pharmacy business years ago. But by the time I was 15, the accounts showed barely enough to cover groceries. "Grandma, what happened to Grandpa's money?" I asked carefully. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I invested it in something precious, something that will pay dividends when the time is right." I assumed she meant some failed investment. I was wrong. She'd spent it on raising me, and on something else, building an ironclad legal case that would one day change everything. Those 10 years weren't just about survival, they were about love in its purest form. Every evening, Grandma and I had our ritual. Tea at the kitchen table, her telling stories about Grandpa Thomas, the pharmacist who'd courted her with handwritten prescriptions for 1 dozen smiles daily, and lifetime supply of hand-holding, no refills needed. "He would have adored you," she'd say, touching the wedding photo on the wall. "He always wanted grandchildren to spoil, had big plans for a college fund and everything." She taught me things my parents never could have. How to bake bread from scratch when we couldn't afford store-bought. How to mend clothes so carefully that no one could tell they were second-hand. How to hold my head high when the world wanted to pity me. "Grace," she said one evening as I helped her with her medications. Her heart was getting weaker. "Never let anyone make you feel less than whole. You're not abandoned. You're chosen. I chose to love you every single day." When I got accepted to medical school, she cried for an hour. "A doctor in the family. Your grandfather would be so proud." Then quieter. "Your parents don't deserve to know how magnificent you've become." That last year, as her health declined, our roles reversed. I became the caregiver, managing her medications, driving her to appointments, sleeping in a chair by her bed when the breathing got bad. "I need to tell you something," she wheezed one night, gripping my hand. "There are arrangements I've made, papers in my closet. The lawyer, Mr. Brennan, he has instructions. When the time comes, everything will make sense." "Grandma, don't talk like that. Promise me, Grace. Promise you'll be strong when they come, because they will come." I promised, not understanding who they were. Grandma passed on a quiet Tuesday morning in March, her hand in mine. "Love you, my darling girl," she whispered, and then she was gone. The grief hit like a physical weight, crushing my chest. For 10 years, she'd been my only family, my anchor, my everything. The house felt hollow without her humming in the kitchen, without her lavender perfume lingering in the hallways. I was arranging her funeral with my last $2,000 when Harold Brennan, her lawyer, called. "Miss Mitchell, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your grandmother was an extraordinary woman. I need to inform you that she left a considerable estate." "Estate?" I almost laughed. Mr. Brennan, she lived on Social Security. I've been working part-time just to cover her medications. Miss Mitchell, your grandmother owned her house outright, had several investment accounts, and most significantly, inherited your grandfather's stake in Pharmacare Industries, which was recently acquired. The total value of the estate is approximately $10 million. I had to sit down. That's That's impossible. She lived frugally by choice, not necessity. She had very specific instructions about her will. The reading will be after the funeral. She insisted on that timing. The funeral was small, or so I thought it would be. Grandma's church friends, Eleanor Patterson from the Hartford Children's Foundation, where Grandma volunteered, some neighbors. I was greeting Eleanor when I saw them. Two figures in designer black, standing by a rental Mercedes. My mother's blonde hair was perfectly styled. My father looked older but distinguished, his suit worth more than Grandma's monthly pension. They walked toward me with confident smiles, as if the last 10 years had been 10 days. Then, at the funeral, I saw two faces I never expected to see again. Grace, oh my goodness, look how you've grown. My mother's voice hadn't changed. Still that theatrical pitch that made everything sound like a performance. She pulled me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and insincerity. I stood rigid, my body refusing to respond. We came as soon as we heard, Dad said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Such a tragedy. Mom was a wonderful woman. Mom. He called her Mom, as if he'd been a devoted son. When did you hear? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Oh, well, we have our sources, Mom said vaguely, her eyes already scanning the crowd. Is the lawyer here? There must be so much to handle. Don't worry, sweetheart. We're here now. We're here now. 10 years too late. During the service, they sat in the front row like grieving family. Dad even gave a speech about beloved Mother Thompson and how much she meant to our family. I watched from my seat, nausea rising as he wiped away what might have been real tears, though I suspected they were for the inheritance, not for Grandma. After the burial, as people offered condolences, I overheard Mom talking to Eleanor Patterson. Such a burden for Mother, raising Grace alone. We wanted to help, of course, but our work overseas, you understand. At least we can make sure Grace is taken care of now. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. How thoughtful. Where exactly overseas were you working? Oh, various places. Singapore, Hong Kong. The art scene there is just incredible. Strange. I'd found their social media once. The photos showed a lot of beaches and parties, not much art. Dad was already on his phone with someone, and I caught the words estate and probate. They knew exactly how much Grandma had left. The question was, how? They cornered me behind the church while everyone was having coffee inside. Grace, we need to talk. Dad's friendly mask had slipped. About what? I kept my voice level. Don't play dumb, Mom snapped. The estate, $10 million. So they did know the exact amount. Interesting. That's Grandma's money, which legally goes to her next of kin, Dad said. That's us, her son and daughter-in-law. I lived with her for 10 years. Mom laughed, a sharp sound. Living somewhere doesn't make you an heir, sweetheart. You're still a child. I'm 19, an adult. Barely, Dad said. Look, Grace, let's be practical. You're a college student. What do you know about managing money? I managed Grandma's medications and household for 3 years. That's not the same as handling millions. His tone turned condescending. We're trying to protect you here. From what? From making mistakes, from gold diggers, from yourself. Mom stepped closer. You'll get something, of course. Maybe enough for medical school. But the bulk needs adult management. Your management? We're your parents, Dad said, as if that meant something. Are you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. The silence stretched taut. What's that supposed to mean? Mom's voice went dangerously quiet. Nothing. I need to get back inside. Dad grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm. The will reading is tomorrow. Don't make this difficult, Grace. We've already spoken to lawyers. So have I lied. He released me, but his eyes were cold. You're making a mistake. We're family. Funny how you remembered that when $10 million appeared. I walked away before they could respond, my heart pounding. Tomorrow, everything would come out. I just had to make it until tomorrow. If you've ever felt powerless against someone who only remembered you existed when they needed something, please leave a like. This story is about to show you the incredible power of patience and proper documentation. I know some of you might be screaming at your screens right now, telling me to confront them directly. But sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, legal, and devastating. Drop a comment below. What would you do if family who abandoned you suddenly returned for money? And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how justice gets served. Now, back to what happened next. The family vultures descended within hours. Grace, dear, you need to think about this rationally. Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister who I'd met exactly twice, suddenly cared deeply about my well-being. Your parents made sacrifices to provide for their future. For your future. What sacrifices? They left me. To work abroad. Do you know how hard it is to maintain a marriage and career overseas? She clutched her pearls. They did what they thought was best. Uncle Marcus chimed in. Blood is blood, Grace. You don't turn your back on blood. Funny. They'd had no problem turning their backs on me. The chorus grew louder at the reception. Cousins I'd never heard from. Great aunts who always wondered what happened to little Grace. All singing the same song. Forgive and forget. Family first. Don't be selfish. She's being manipulated, I heard Mom tell them. Someone's poisoned her against us. Probably wants the money for themselves. Only Eleanor Patterson stood apart, watching quietly. When she approached me, her voice was gentle but firm. Your grandmother talked about you constantly, said you were the best investment she ever made. Investment? Her words. She also said you were stronger than you knew. Eleanor pressed a business card into my hand. If you need anything, anything at all, call me. As she walked away, she paused. Your grandmother was a meticulous woman. She believed in documentation. Remember that tomorrow. That night, alone in Grandma's house, I found myself in her room. The filing cabinet in her closet seemed to pulse with significance, but I didn't open it. Whatever was in there, Grandma had her reasons for keeping it sealed. Tomorrow, at the will reading, all would be revealed. I just had to survive the night with my parents circling like sharks who'd finally smelled blood. The law offices of Brennan and Associates occupied the top floor of a historic Hartford building. Mr. Brennan had scheduled the reading for 2 p.m., 3 days after the funeral. I arrived alone, carrying nothing but Grandma's worn leather purse, the one she'd carried to every important event of my life. My parents were already there with their lawyer, a sharp-suited man named Kellerman, who looked like he ate smaller lawyers for breakfast. Mom wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Grandma's monthly expenses. Dad kept checking his Rolex. Grace, Mom's voice dripped false warmth. We were worried you wouldn't come. Why wouldn't I come? Well, this must be so overwhelming for you, Dad said. That's why we brought Mr. Kellerman, to help navigate the complexities. Their lawyer smiled, all teeth. Miss Mitchell, your parents have filled me in on the situation. 10 years is a long time, but legal relationships don't simply dissolve. Interesting perspective, I said, taking a seat across from them. The room filled gradually. Eleanor Patterson arrived, nodding to me warmly. Several of Grandma's church friends, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Marcus, even some people I didn't recognize, probably distant relatives hoping for crumbs. Mr. Brennan entered last, carrying a large document box. His assistant wheeled in a TV on a cart, which made my parents exchange confused glances. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Brennan began, his voice formal. Before we proceed, I need to verify that all interested parties are present. Robert Mitchell? Here. Linda Mitchell? Present. Grace Mitchell? Here, I said quietly. He looked at me then, and something in his eyes, sympathy, Encouragement? Made my spine straighten. Very well. Mrs. Thompson left very specific instructions for these proceedings. He opened the box. But first, there's something she wanted everyone to see. My mind drifted back to all the times Grandma had hinted at something bigger. There was that day 5 years ago when I'd found her in the study with a video camera, recording something. She'd quickly closed it when I walked in, saying she was preserving memories for posterity. Grandma, you sound like you're planning something, I'd teased. Every good general plans for all contingencies, she'd replied, which was odd since Grandma had never been military. Then there were the meetings with Mr. Brennan that increased in frequency over the last 2 years. Estate planning, she'd say vaguely when I asked. Making sure everything's in order. The filing cabinet in her closet. I'd helped her move it once, and it was surprisingly heavy. Important papers, she'd said. Insurance documents, birth certificates, that sort of thing. But the way she'd said it, carefully casual, made me wonder. Eleanor Patterson's words echoed. Your grandmother was a meticulous woman. Now, watching Mr. Brennan carefully arrange documents on the table, I noticed several thick folders labeled with dates going back 10 years. My parents hadn't noticed. They were too busy whispering with their lawyer about undue influence and mental capacity. Mr. Brennan, Dad said suddenly, before we proceed, we should establish that my mother was of sound mind when this will was created. Oh, absolutely, Mr. Brennan replied, with a slight smile. Mrs. Thompson took great care to ensure everything was ironclad. She had mental capacity evaluations done annually for the past 5 years. Would you like to see them? Dad's face tightened. That's thorough. Your mother was nothing if not thorough, Mr. Mitchell. She believed in being, as she put it, prepared for all eventualities. Mom shifted uncomfortably. What's with the TV? All in due time, Mrs. Mitchell. All in due time. While Mr. Brennan prepared his documents, my parents launched their campaign. It's been so hard, Mom told the room, her voice catching dramatically. Being away from family, we sent money every month, you know. Mother she was too proud to accept it. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. She always was stubborn, Dad added, playing the grieving son. We begged her to let us help with Grace, but she insisted she could manage alone. Such a shame, Aunt Patricia murmured. All those years of misunderstanding. We even tried to bring Grace with us initially, Mom continued, warming to her fiction. But Mother threatened legal action, said we were unfit parents for wanting to pursue our careers. That was new, creative, but completely false. We have the bank records, Dad said, pulling out his phone. Wire transfers we attempted, all returned. I wondered how much they'd paid someone to fabricate those. Eleanor Patterson spoke up. Strange. Maggie never mentioned receiving any money. As I said, she was proud, Mom snapped. Too proud for her own good. We lived in a tiny apartment in Singapore, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. Saving everything to send home, living on ramen while Mother sat on millions. Several relatives murmured sympathetically. The narrative was working. The prodigal son and his wife, sacrificing overseas while the stubborn matriarch kept their child from them. We just want what's fair, Mom said, dabbing at her eyes, to honor Mother's memory and make sure Grace is taken care of properly. Mr. Brennan cleared his throat. If we're quite finished with the preliminaries, perhaps we should proceed with Mrs. Thompson's actual wishes. Of course, Dad said magnanimously. We're ready to hear Mother's will. They were so confident, so sure. They had no idea what was coming. The room arranged itself like a courtroom, my parents and their lawyer on one side, me sitting alone on the other. Eleanor positioned herself neutrally in the middle, while the relatives filled the remaining seats like an eager jury. Mr. Brennan's assistant finished setting up the TV, connecting a laptop with practiced efficiency. The document box sat open, revealing colored tabs and multiple sealed envelopes. This will reading is being recorded for legal purposes, Mr. Brennan announced, pointing to a small camera in the corner. Mrs. Thompson insisted on complete transparency. Recording? Mom's voice pitched higher. Is that necessary? Mrs. Thompson's instructions were very specific, Mrs. Mitchell. Everything must be documented. Their lawyer, Kellerman, leaned forward. My clients have no objection to recording. They have nothing to hide. The irony of that statement hung in the air. Mr. Brennan pulled out a sealed envelope marked Last Will and Testament in Grandma's careful handwriting. But he set it aside, reaching instead for a folder labeled Supporting Documentation. Before we read the will itself, Mrs. Thompson requested that certain context be established. Context? Dad frowned. What kind of context? You'll see momentarily. First, I must verify. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, you maintain that you are the legal parents of Grace Mitchell? Of course we are, Mom said indignantly. What kind of question is that? A necessary one, and you claim rights as next of kin to Margaret Thompson's estate? As her only son and daughter-in-law, yes, Dad confirmed. Mr. Brennan made a note. I see. And Miss Grace Mitchell, you were raised by Mrs. Thompson from what age? 9 years old, I said clearly. And your parents' involvement during those years? Before I could answer, Dad interrupted. We've already explained the situation. Of course. Well then, let's begin with Mrs. Thompson's video message. Before Mr. Brennan could start the video, Dad stood up. Wait, we need to address something first. His voice commanded the room's attention. My wife and I have concerns about undue influence. Robert, sit down, Mr. Brennan said calmly. No, this needs to be said. Dad turned to face the room. For 10 years, this girl has poisoned our mother against us, filled her head with lies about abandonment. Lies? I couldn't help myself. Yes, lies. Mom stood too, tears streaming down her face. She'd always been able to cry on command. We sacrificed everything, our relationship with our daughter, time with family, all to build a better future. And this ungrateful child, Dad pointed at me, convinced a sick, elderly woman to cut out her own son, her flesh and blood. The relatives murmured. Some nodded sympathetically. She manipulated Mother when she was vulnerable, Mom continued. Isolated her from us, controlled her medications, her finances, everything. We tried to visit, but Grace always had excuses why it wasn't a good time. That was rich, considering they'd never once tried to visit. We have witnesses, Kellerman added smoothly. People who will testify that Miss Mitchell exhibited controlling behavior toward Mrs. Thompson. What witnesses? Eleanor asked sharply. That's privileged information, Kellerman replied. But rest assured, if this will attempts to disinherit my clients, we'll challenge it vigorously. She's 19 years old, Dad's voice rose. What does a teenager know about managing $10 million? She'll squander it on parties and nonsense while dishonoring Mother's memory. The room was fully on their side now. Poor parents, evil granddaughter. The narrative was complete. Mr. Brennan waited until they were done, then said mildly, Are you finished? Because Mrs. Thompson anticipated this exact scenario. He pressed play. My parents weren't done with their performance. Mother was showing signs of dementia, Mom announced to the room. Forgetting things, confused about dates. Grace took advantage of that. I have medical reports, Dad added, pulling out papers. Documentation of Mother's declining mental state. Mr. Brennan examined them briefly. These are from a Dr. Williams in Singapore. He never treated Mrs. Thompson. We consulted him about her symptoms, Dad said smoothly, based on our observations during phone calls. What phone calls? I asked quietly. The ones you prevented us from making. Mom turned on me, her face a mask of anguish. Every time we tried to reach out, you intercepted, told Mother we didn't care. The lies were so bold, so confident, that even I almost believed them for a second. She's a gold digger, plain and simple, Dad declared. Saw a lonely old woman with money and latched on like a parasite. Parasite? Eleanor stood up. This young woman worked part-time jobs while going to school full-time to help with expenses. I've seen her at the food bank getting groceries when Maggie's pension ran short. All an act, Mom dismissed, making herself look like a martyr while sitting on millions. We loved Mother, Dad's voice cracked, almost convincingly. We made mistakes, yes, staying away too long, trusting she was okay. But we never stopped loving her. Or you, Grace. He looked at me with what might have been genuine emotion. We're your parents. Whatever poison Mother put in your head, we're still your parents. And we're here now. Here for the money, I said. The room gasped at my bluntness. How dare you, Mom shrieked. You ungrateful little— I think, Mr. Brennan interrupted firmly, we should watch the video now. Sometimes the hardest thing is staying silent when lies are being told about you. If you've ever had to bite your tongue while someone rewrote history, type truth in the comments. The video is about to change everything. This is where patience pays off and documentation becomes power. My grandmother knew exactly what she was doing, and you're about to see why keeping records matters more than winning arguments. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that justice doesn't always come fast, but it does come. And hit subscribe for the moment everything flips. Mr. Brennan adjusted his glasses with deliberate calm. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen. This video was recorded by Mrs. Thompson 6 months before her passing, in the presence of 2 witnesses and a notary public. The screen flickered to life, and there was Grandma. She looked frailer than I remembered from 6 months ago, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She sat in Mr. Brennan's office wearing her favorite purple cardigan, the one I'd gotten her for Christmas. Hello, everyone, Grandma's voice filled the room. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and certain people have suddenly remembered I existed. My parents shifted uncomfortably. I want to be very clear about something from the start. I am of completely sound mind. Behind me are Dr. Sarah Henderson, my physician of 15 years, and Dr. Michael Chang, a psychiatrist who has evaluated me monthly for the past year. Gentlemen, both doctors leaned into frame, confirming her mental capacity on the recording date. Now then, Grandma continued, let me tell you a story about abandonment, love, and why blood doesn't always mean family. Dad stood up. This is ridiculous. She's obviously been coached. Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Brennan's voice was steel. Sit down, or you'll be removed. These are Mrs. Thompson's final wishes, and they will be heard. You can't. Security is standing by outside. Your choice. Dad sat, his face flushed with anger. Grandma's image waited patiently, as if she'd known there would be an interruption right there. Robert, if you're watching this, you just tried to interrupt, didn't you? Some things never change. A sad smile crossed her face. Now, let me tell you about September 15th, 2014, the day my son abandoned his daughter on my doorstep. Grandma's face on the screen was calm but determined. On September 15th, 2014, Robert and Linda Mitchell brought their 9-year-old daughter to my home. They said it was temporary, just a few months while they established themselves in Singapore. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. What they didn't tell me was that 3 days earlier they had signed legal documents surrendering their parental rights to Grace. I have those documents here. She held up a folder, and the camera zoomed in on the label. Voluntary Termination of Parental Rights, September 12th, 2014. My mother gasped. That's not— we never— Quiet, someone hissed. Grandma continued. They needed both parents' consent to place Grace for adoption through the state. Instead of going through with the adoption, they left her with me and disappeared. They assumed I'd never find out about the paperwork. But I did find out. Mr. Brennan helped me track down the records. Robert, Linda, you legally abandoned your daughter. You're not her parents anymore, haven't been for 10 years. The room erupted. My parents were both shouting, their lawyer frantically flipping through his papers. The relatives were talking over each other in shock. That's impossible, Dad roared. We never signed anything like that. On screen, Grandma seemed to anticipate this too. I'm sure you'll claim the documents are forged. That's why I also have this. The video cut to security footage from a law office. There were my parents, clear as day, signing documents while a lawyer explained, "You understand this permanently terminates your parental rights? You will have no legal claim to this child?" "We understand," past Dad said impatiently. "Where do we sign?" The room went completely silent. Mr. Brennan pulled out a thick folder from his document box. "I have here the original documents, properly notarized and filed with the Connecticut Department of Children and Families." He laid them on the table. The header was unmistakable. Voluntary termination of parental rights. "Let me see that!" Kellerman snatched the papers, scanning rapidly. His face went pale. "Robert, Linda, these are real." "They can't be!" Mom shrieked. "We were told it was temporary guardianship." "You were told exactly what it was," Mr. Brennan said calmly. "I have the transcript from the hearing. You both confirmed under oath that you understood you were permanently severing parental rights." He produced another document. Page 3, line 14. Judge Martinez asks, "Mr. Mitchell, do you understand that this action is permanent and irrevocable?" Your response? "Yes, Your Honor, we understand." Dad's lawyer was frantically reading, looking for a loophole. This is ironclad. They have no parental rights, haven't for a decade." "But we're still her blood," Dad protested. "We're still Mother's next of kin." "Actually," Mr. Brennan said, "that brings us to an interesting point. Mrs. Thompson legally adopted Grace in 2016. Another document appeared. "Grace Thompson Mitchell became Mrs. Thompson's legal daughter 2 years after you abandoned her, which makes her, not you, the next of kin." The video of Grandma resumed. "I didn't tell Grace about the adoption. I wanted her to choose to keep the Mitchell name if she wished. But legally, she became my daughter the moment you decided she wasn't yours." Mom collapsed into her chair. "This isn't happening." "Oh," Grandma's voice continued from the screen. "I'm not done yet. Let's talk about those 10 years of sending money you'll probably claim." Grandma's video continued relentlessly. "In 10 years, I received exactly $0 from Robert and Linda Mitchell. Not a penny. But I'm sure they'll claim otherwise, so I kept every bank statement." The screen showed a montage of bank statements, month after month, year after year. "No deposits from R. Mitchell or L. Mitchell." "I also hired a private investigator," Grandma said. "Would you like to know what your parents were doing while claiming poverty, Grace?" Photos appeared. My parents at a beach resort in Bali, at a casino in Macau, shopping in Tokyo, living in a luxury apartment in Singapore that probably cost $10,000 a month. Their social media was very enlightening. Linda's Instagram bio read, "Living our best child-free life." That was particularly touching. Mom made a choking sound. "Now for my will." Grandma's face grew serious. "I, Margaret Thompson, being of sound mind and body, leave my entire estate as follows. To my beloved daughter Grace Thompson Mitchell, the house, all investment accounts, and the proceeds from the sale of Pharmacare Industries, totaling approximately $10 million. To Robert Mitchell and Linda Mitchell, $1 each. This is not an oversight. This is deliberate. You abandoned your daughter, and this is $1 more than you deserve. To the Hartford Children's Foundation, directed by Eleanor Patterson, $2 million from my estate, to be administered by Grace when she reaches 21. To various charities listed in Appendix A, $500,000. Mr. Brennan looked up. The will is clear and uncontestable. Grace inherits everything except the charitable donations. But wait! Grandma's voice drew attention back to the screen. "There's one more thing. Robert, Linda, I know you're wondering how I could afford to raise Grace if I had all this money. Let me show you exactly where your daughter's inheritance went." My parents' carefully constructed world shattered in seconds. "This can't be legal!" Dad slammed his fist on the table. "We'll contest this. She was manipulated." "On what grounds?" Mr. Brennan asked mildly. "You have no standing. You're not her legal parents. You're not even legally related to Grace anymore. That adoption was fraudulent, Mom screamed. We didn't know. You didn't know because you never contacted your daughter or Mrs. Thompson for 10 years, Eleanor said coldly. Not once. Kellerman, their lawyer, was already packing his briefcase. I can't help you. This is airtight. You legally abandoned your child, and Mrs. Thompson followed every proper procedure. You're fired, Dad shouted at him. You can't fire me. I'm withdrawing from representation. Kellerman turned to Mr. Brennan. I had no knowledge of the termination of parental rights. They told me they were the rightful heirs. Wait, Mom grabbed Kellerman's arm. There has to be something. Undue influence, mental incapacity, elder abuse. Did you not see the psychiatric evaluations, the witnesses, the video evidence? Kellerman shook her off. You lied to me. You have no case. You have no rights. Accept your $2 and move on. The relatives were backing away from my parents, like they had something contagious. Aunt Patricia actually moved her chair away from them. We're her parents, Dad kept repeating, like saying it would make it true. No, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the video started. You were my parents. You stopped being that the day you signed those papers and walked away. Mom turned on me, her face twisted with rage. You little... Security, Mr. Brennan called calmly. 2 uniformed guards entered immediately. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. 10 years, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. 10 years of birthdays, Christmases, school plays, science fairs. 10 years of Grandma working herself sick to pay for my clothes, my food, my education. I looked directly at my parents. You know what she spent that inheritance on? Me, my tutoring, my medical bills when I got pneumonia, my SAT prep, my college applications. She spent nearly $800,000 raising your abandoned daughter while you posted beach selfies. Grace, please, Mom started. No. The word came out firm, final. You don't get to please me now. You made your choice. You signed papers saying I wasn't your daughter anymore. You got what you wanted, a child-free life. I pulled out my phone. I have your Instagram right here, Mom. 3 weeks after you left me, finally free to live our dreams. No regrets, hashtag child-free life. Living. Our best life. Several people gasped. Eleanor nodded approvingly. We made a mistake, Dad said desperately. We were young, stupid. You were 39 and 42. That's not young. That's just selfish. I turned to Mr. Brennan. Is there anything else? Just the transfer papers for you to sign. The house is yours immediately. The liquid assets will transfer within 5 business days. We'll sue, Mom shrieked. We'll take this to every court in the country. With what money? I asked quietly. I did my research. You're both broke. Dad, you were fired from your Singapore job 6 months ago for embezzlement. Mom, you haven't sold a painting in 3 years. You came here because you're desperate. Their faces went white. They hadn't known I knew. Leave. Now. Don't contact me again. The security guards moved toward my parents, but Mr. Brennan raised a hand. Wait, there's one more document. He pulled out 2 envelopes. Mrs. Thompson insisted these be given to you personally. He handed one to each of my parents. Dad ripped his open immediately. Inside was a single dollar bill and a note. His face went purple as he read it. What does it say? Aunt Patricia asked, curiosity overcoming discretion. Dad crumpled the note, but Mr. Brennan spoke up. I have copies. Mrs. Thompson wanted these read aloud if necessary. He cleared his throat. To Robert, this dollar is your inheritance. It's $1 more than the support you provided your daughter. I hope it was worth it. Mom's note was similar. To Linda, this dollar represents the value you placed on your child. May you never forget the price of your freedom. Additionally, Mr. Brennan continued, Mrs. Thompson filed a civil suit 2 years ago for child support. You were served through publication in Singapore newspapers, which constitutes legal service. You never responded, so a default judgment was entered. You owe Grace $180,000 in back child support. What? Dad staggered. Dad. With interest and penalties, it's now $243,000. This judgment can be collected through wage garnishment, asset seizure, or liens on any property you might acquire. Eleanor stood up. I should also mention that the Hartford Children's Foundation will be investigating whether fraud charges are appropriate for the fictitious donation claims you've been making for tax purposes. What donation claims? Mom whispered. The ones where you claim to support your dependent child for 10 years of tax deductions while she was living with Mrs. Thompson. The security guard stepped forward. This time, my parents didn't resist. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Within 48 hours, the story had spread through Hartford's social circles like wildfire. "Did you hear about the Mitchells?" became the opening line at every coffee shop and country club. Dad's former employer in Singapore, already suspicious about the embezzlement, launched a full investigation. Turns out, claiming to have a dependent child had been part of his benefits fraud. The criminal charges came 2 weeks later. Mom's art career, what was left of it, evaporated overnight. The gallery that had been considering her work sent a terse email. "We cannot be associated with someone who would abandon their child." Her Instagram, with its 50,000 followers, lost 45,000 in 3 days after someone posted the courthouse video in the comments. The relatives who'd initially supported them distanced themselves immediately. Aunt Patricia sent me a Facebook message. "I had no idea, Grace. Your grandmother was a saint. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. Uncle Marcus was more direct. "They're not welcome at family gatherings anymore. What they did was unforgivable." But the real blow came when their landlord in Singapore contacted them. Turns out, they'd been living on borrowed time, 3 months behind on rent. Without the inheritance they'd counted on, they had 30 days to vacate. They tried selling their story to tabloids, claiming I'd manipulated Grandma. But Mr. Brennan sent cease and desist letters, and when journalists saw the termination papers and the video, no one would touch it. Last I heard, they were living in a studio apartment in New Jersey, both working minimum wage jobs. Mom as a grocery store cashier, Dad in a call center, the same jobs Grandma had worked to raise me. Karma, as it turns out, keeps excellent records. I graduated from medical school last month, 3rd in my class. The money Grandma left me paid for everything: tuition, books, the apartment near campus. But more importantly, it let me focus on what mattered: becoming the doctor she always believed I could be. I chose pediatrics, specializing in children from difficult family situations. Every day, I see kids who remind me of 9-year-old me, confused, abandoned, wondering what they did wrong. I tell them what Grandma told me: "You're not broken, you're not unwanted, you're just with the wrong people right now." The Margaret Thompson Foundation, which I established with part of the inheritance, has provided full scholarships to 53 abandoned or foster children so far. Each one gets not just money, but mentorship, counseling, and what Grandma called aggressive believing in their potential. Eleanor Patterson helps run it. She told me once, "Your grandmother would burst with pride seeing this." I kept Grandma's house exactly as it was, except for one room. Her sewing room is now my study, where I keep all her documents, the evidence of love she collected for 10 years. Sometimes I read through them. Every receipt for my school supplies, every photo from events my parents missed, every report card she proudly saved. The filing cabinet that once held termination papers and bank statements now holds acceptance letters from the kids our foundation has helped. 53 so far, each one a victory over abandonment. Dr. Henderson, Grandma's physician, sent me a letter recently. "Your grandmother once told me Grace would heal more than just bodies. She'd heal families. She was right, wasn't she? She was right about everything." I still live in her house, still drink tea from her favorite cups, still hear her voice when I'm facing something difficult. "Grace, darling, dignity isn't about what others think. It's about knowing your worth." I know it now. Family, I've learned, isn't about DNA or legal documents. It's about who shows up. Grandma showed up every single day for 10 years. She showed up to school plays, where she was the oldest person in the audience. She showed up to parent-teacher conferences, with her arthritis making every step painful. She showed up at 2 a.m. when nightmares about abandonment woke me screaming. My parents? They showed up when $10 million was on the table. The foundation has taught me something else. Chosen family is everywhere. Eleanor, who started as Grandma's friend, is now mine. She's the one I called when I got into medical school, when I passed my boards, when I needed someone to remind me I was enough. Mr. Brennan still sends birthday cards every year with the same message. Your grandmother's greatest investment continues to pay dividends. The families we help through the foundation have become a network of support. Last Thanksgiving, 17 scholarship recipients came to Grandma's house for dinner. We cooked her recipes, told stories about overcoming abandonment, and nobody asked, "Where are your real parents?" We knew. Real parents don't need biology. They need to be present. I've forgiven Robert and Linda Mitchell, not for them, but for me. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing them back into my life. It means I don't carry the weight of their choices anymore. They have to live with what they did. I get to live with what Grandma did. Loved me unconditionally, fought for me legally, and made sure I'd never need them again. Sometimes people ask if I regret not having parents. I tell them I had the best parent imaginable. She just happened to be called Grandma. Love isn't about titles, it's about actions. And for 10 years, every single day, Grandma's actions said, "You are worthy, you are loved, you are mine." The letter arrived on the anniversary of Grandma's death. No return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. Inside, 3 pages of excuses, justifications, and one repeated phrase: "We've changed." They wrote about their struggles, their poverty, their regrets. How Dad's criminal charges had been dropped to misdemeanors. How Mom was finding herself through meditation. How they'd joined a church and were working on forgiveness. "We know we hurt you," the letter said, "but we're still your parents. Biology doesn't just disappear. We want to make amends, to be the family we should have been." They included a photo, them looking older, grayer, standing in front of a tiny apartment with forced smiles. On the back, "We're ready to be parents now." Eleanor was with me when I read it. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I walked to Grandma's desk, pulled out her good stationery, and wrote a single paragraph. "Thank you for your letter. I wish you well in your journey of self-improvement. However, you terminated your parental rights on September 12, 2014. This was a legal and permanent decision. I am honoring that decision and the boundaries it created. Please do not contact me again. Any further communication will be forwarded to my attorney." I signed it, Dr. Grace Mitchell, and sealed it. Eleanor smiled. Maggie would be proud. Professional, clear, and absolutely final. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Not out of anger or spite, but out of respect for the person who built a new bridge to replace it. One made of love, sacrifice, and showing up every single day. Grandma built that bridge. I'm not tearing it down for anyone, especially not for 2 strangers who happen to share my DNA. Last week, I received the Harold Thompson Award for Excellence in Pediatric Care, the highest honor at Hartford Hospital. Standing at that podium, looking out at the audience, I saw Eleanor in the front row, crying happy tears. Mr. Brennan was there, proud as any grandfather. My colleagues, my mentors, the families I'd helped, all there to celebrate not just my achievement, but Grandma's legacy. "This award belongs to Margaret Thompson," I said into the microphone. "She taught me that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about seeing the abandoned, the overlooked, the ones everyone else gave up on and saying, 'You matter, you're worth fighting for.'" The Margaret Thompson Foundation has grown beyond what I imagined. We've partnered with 3 hospitals to provide free mental health services to abandoned children. We've funded a legal clinic for grandparents seeking custody of abandoned grandchildren. This year alone, we've helped 127 families stay together when the alternative was separation. My office wall has two photos, my medical school graduation and Grandma's portrait. Patients often ask about her. She's my mom, I tell them, and I don't explain further. They don't need to know she was technically my grandmother. What matters is she was everything a parent should be. The house that once felt empty after Grandma died is now full of life. Every Thursday, I host dinner for kids from the foundation who are in college. We cook Grandma's recipes, her famous pot roast, her apple pie, her secret ingredient chocolate cake. The secret was love and an extra stick of butter. They call me Dr. G, and they call the house Grandma's place, even though they never met her. Her spirit fills every room, every meal, every moment, when a kid who's been thrown away realizes they're worth keeping. That's the real inheritance she left. Not money, but the knowledge that love multiplies when you give it away. Here's what I've learned about boundaries. They're not walls, they're doors. And you get to decide who has the key. Grandma gave me her key the day my parents drove away. She never asked for it back, never made me earn it, never threatened to take it away. That's what real family does. They give you the key and trust you with it forever. My parents? They threw away their key, had it legally destroyed, then showed up a decade later with a crowbar, trying to break down the door. That's not love. That's entitlement. Every abandoned child who comes through my office or the foundation gets told the same thing. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your DNA. Family is earned through presence, not inherited through genetics. Some people think I'm bitter. I'm not. I'm free. Free from wondering if I'm lovable. Grandma proved I was. Free from seeking approval from people who signed papers saying I wasn't theirs. Free from the weight of their choices. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about protecting the life someone who truly loved you helped you build. It's about honoring the person who stayed by refusing to let the ones who left claim credit for who you became. If you're struggling with toxic family, if you're being told to forgive and forget while the hurt keeps happening, if you're made to feel guilty for protecting your peace, remember this. Boundaries are not cruel. They're necessary. The strongest thing you can do is know your worth and refuse to let anyone who doesn't see it have a seat at your table. What boundaries do you need to set today? Who do you need to lock out so you can finally let peace in? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to set boundaries with family who only remembered you existed when they needed something, type boundaries in the comments below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're worthy of real love, not conditional attention. Your story matters, and you deserve people who show up for more than just the inheritance. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about strength, justice, and the power of choosing your own family. What did you think of my grandmother's planning? I'd love to hear your thoughts below.